Okay, so for today's video, I want to talk about what love is, or what is it to you at least, so you could reflect and maybe decide if you need to redefine it into something that allows you to feel it now, or just no matter what's happening. Because I realized for me, at first I thought it was a feeling that you had to sustain and, keep going, or it was something that you had to get from other people. But when you think of love as just a feeling, if you're not feeling it, you're going to assume, like, what's wrong? Why don't I feel good? And then you're struggling and resisting against feeling bad. And then at the same time, you're still not feeling the love that you want. So you don't ever get there when you're in that mindset, or when you have that definition of love. And the other thing is, once I realized that it couldn't just be a feeling that I was trying to hold on to or chase or grasp, the next thing that I realized was flawed was thinking that you needed it from other people. Because when you're someone like me who doesn't have those relationships that express it to you, it makes you feel like, okay, well, I don't have people in my life to love me either. So how am I supposed to be loved if I don't have that? It's kind of like those situations where they're like, oh, well, to get this job, you need experience. But if nobody's willing to give you a job to get the experience, then how the hell are you supposed to be able to get a job, period? And you see how that puts you in a cycle of chasing love but never actually finding it. And that's kind of part of that mechanism that keeps you stuck in a belief that you're not lovable or that you can't get it. And that's part of the self-reinforcing mechanism of those belief systems, where if you don't think you're lovable, then that's all you're going to find evidence to support that. So it made me really reflect on myself and decide that I am loved regardless of what people are doing, regardless of the relationships, regardless of how I'm feeling, because that was the biggest thing for me. Not feeling good most of the time would make it hard for me to believe it's even possible to be loved if I'm feeling so crappy when I don't want to feel bad anymore. So I guess that was one of the other beliefs I had to think about, was that I'm bad or something's wrong with me because I don't feel the happy, excited or warm home feeling that people get when they're in love, or they just at least have that mindset about things. So basically, I want to talk about, like, your capacity to love and where that comes from. So with that, I had to realize that your capacity to love is just in your nature. It's just something that you have to put your attention and awareness on. It's not something that is learned. Well, it can be learned, but most of us don't really have the awareness to understand that we are love itself. Like, we're all expressions of love. We're all physical manifestations. The embodiment of love, just our whole existence, comes from that. So it was never anything that, like, you needed to learn from your parents or other people, but most of us just subconsciously, it's natural for us to pick up from our caretakers and the people that we spend the most time around, because not everybody struggles with this, but a large majority of people will pick up on the kind of love that they receive from those around them. So if you had strict parents, they might think that they're showing you love by taking care of you, being hard on you, but then you subconsciously take that in as, well, I have to be hard on myself. So you might self-sabotage, you might be critical, you might treat yourself so badly by not allowing yourself to have the things that you want, because psychologically, mentally, you think you're loving yourself by being mean or harsh to yourself, or just behaving the same way that your parents or caretakers treated you. Like, a lot of us have that mentality of giving ourselves the kind of love that we've been exposed to. So I know that was my big mistake, of thinking that I wasn't good enough, and then I was always putting myself down, and that was my way of loving myself and keeping myself safe. But it's like, you don't have to treat yourself badly to show yourself that you love yourself. You could literally allow yourself to have the life and the things that you want without needing to defend it or give a reasoning, or find some type of value in it. Like, we don't need to learn lessons and go through hardships just to allow ourselves to be abundant, to be loved, or whatever it is that we want. But until you have the awareness to see, okay, this is how I've kind of been trying to protect myself and keep myself safe, instead of doing that, just bring the safety that and the assurances that you require. And if you can give that stuff to yourself, it'll just naturally reflect in the relationships that you currently have or the ones that come into your life. But it all starts with you. So for me, looking at my capacity to love, I at first was thinking that it was because of how I was raised and how I came up, and not having the affection and the assurance and the confidence that I needed. But then I realized I was the source for all of that. It's just I didn't believe in myself as worthy enough or deserving enough for it. And that's another thing. You don't need to be deserving in order to have anything. You're naturally deserving because you're alive, because you exist. So I just mean, it's not that you don't need to be deserving in the sense that like you don't deserve it, but it's more of you're naturally deserving. So it's like you have nothing to prove, and you never had anything to prove in terms of showing anyone that you're lovable. It just means that it's independent of anything that you could ever do. Even if you did the worst thing, you're still valuable for who you are. And if you don't know that, nothing that anybody else could do can prove that to you, because the most insecure person could have a partner who's supportive, who tells them they love you and does everything that you say that you want. But if you could still see those behaviors and still find a way to feel like you're not good enough. And that's when it becomes draining on other people, because nobody could uplift you enough for you to believe in yourself. And even if they do, you'll just end up being dependent on other people to give you the assurance you need. And that's still getting validation from people outside of you, which is an endless cycle that never really gives you the security that you say that you want. So all of that boils down to your self-concept, who you think you are, and just realizing your expectations, or even what you think your needs are. If you feel like everything in terms of relationships is completely dependent on your partner's assurances and support, that's going to drain them. It's going to drain the relationship, and it's going to drain you. Like, we don't need people in the way that we've been led to believe we do. It's just in certain societies, it's been, maybe a male dominated society having control, like at least in the US, that it's always been the male figure that's kind of been in charge. From back in the day, they'll make all the decisions in the household, especially in government and politics, is mostly male figures who seem to get further. Obviously, there's a couple exceptions, but just in general, you could see how some societies kind of already have those rules built in. So even when you see the world outside of you, it's kind of already telling you who's kind of in control. But you don't need to look to any of those things for examples of the love that you want, unless it's what you want. And that was just an example. I know it wasn't really relevant, but it's just something that came to my mind. So yeah, basically, to wrap up, your self-concept is who you think you are in relationship to love, other people. And you have to have the security and know who you are before you can invite somebody else into your life. Like, you don't need other people. You're supposed to be the main character, and you're supposed to just allow other people to support you, but not in a way that you feel like you can't live without them. Obviously, you could fall in love with someone and have that dynamic, and it might work out for you, but I just feel like you should still have your self-awareness and sense of who you are, your sense of independence and autonomy in a relationship. That way you can still have a healthy balance with your loved one, or even with your friends, and know that it's no resentment behind it. Instead, it's actually people who love themselves, know who they are, know that they're whole and complete as individuals. So coming together just makes sense, because it just makes it that much more exciting and delicious to be with somebody who's assured of themselves. And I don't have a lot more to say about that because ultimately you get to decide what love is for you, what it feels like, and how it shows up in your life. But I know for me, I realize that love is who I am. And even when I'm not loving myself, now that I know I'm still loved. So it's more of nurturing myself in those times where I don't feel my best and reminding myself that just because I have emotions doesn't mean that I'm not loved. So when I have doubts and fears, I'm not as reactive or having as much anxiety anymore because I know that that doesn't take away from me knowing that I am loved. But obviously the next step after that is to actually feel in the energy of love more often, just meaning feeling more uplifted and more positive and less reactive. So that's kind of what I'm working towards. And it's really just taking it moment to moment, being positive, trying to find the best in yourself and others, because it's just a better feeling way to live than being sad. So even if your circumstances never change, to at least be able to say that you feel good and not feel fearful or anxious about things is a relief in itself. And I think that's where I'm going to end this video. The next one is going to be talking about the choice to love, and I have a couple other things lined up for this week and next week. But hope you guys are enjoying the series so far, and I'll see y'all in the next video.